My mother-in-law secretly poisoned me for months, then smiled as I handed her a birthday gift. When I finally confronted her, she laughed and said, "If I can't have the daughter-in-law I want, I'll fix the one I have." I didn't say a word. That was 3 months ago. Yesterday, she was dragged out of the courtroom screaming, "You'll all regret this." I've been married to my husband Marcus for 3 years. His mother Linda never liked me. She wanted him to marry his ex from high school who's now a doctor. I'm a graphic designer, which apparently isn't good enough for her precious son. I have a severe tree nut allergy. Not the I get a little itchy kind. The I stop breathing and need an EpiPen kind. I've been hospitalized twice in my life because of it. Marcus made sure his whole family knew this when we started dating. About 8 months ago, I started getting sick after Sunday dinners at Linda's house. Nothing severe, just stomach cramps, mild hives, feeling off. I thought maybe I was developing new allergies, so I got tested. Nothing new showed up. My allergist said I was probably getting trace amounts of nuts somewhere. I became super careful. I started bringing my own food to gatherings. Linda acted offended, saying I was being dramatic, and her food was safe. She'd make a big show of reading labels and asking about ingredients when we ate out. Marcus thought I was being paranoid. 2 months ago, Linda invited us over to help clean out her basement. While moving boxes, I found her old recipe book. Curious, I flipped through it. There were sticky notes everywhere. On her famous nut-free banana bread recipe, add almond extract, small amount. On her special pasta sauce, walnut oil instead of olive oil. On literally every dish she'd served me in the past 8 months. My hands were shaking. I took photos of every single page. Then I found something worse, a printed article about building tolerance to allergies through microexposure, with sections highlighted. She'd been purposely poisoning me, thinking she could cure my allergy. I didn't tell Marcus immediately. Instead, I went to my allergist and had comprehensive testing done. Blood work showed elevated antibodies consistent with repeated nut exposure. I filed a police report for assault and got a restraining order. Linda's 65th birthday was last week. The whole family gathered at a restaurant. Marcus and I showed up, and I acted completely normal. Smiled, gave her a gift, took photos. Then, right as they brought out her birthday cake, 2 police officers walked in. The look on her face when they said they had a warrant for her arrest was priceless. She started screaming that I was a lying witch trying to destroy her family. Then the officers read the charges: attempted poisoning and assault with intent to cause bodily harm. Marcus was in shock. His sister was recording everything for birthday memories and got the whole arrest on video. Linda kept screaming about how she was trying to help and that I was too sensitive. The officers cuffed her right there in front of everyone. Here's the thing though, I wasn't done. See, I'd been in contact with her other daughter-in-law, Marcus's brother's wife. Turns out Linda had been doing something similar to her, but with gluten. She has celiac disease. We compared notes and she'd been experiencing the same mysterious symptoms after Linda's dinners. Update 1. Linda made bail, but the case is moving forward. The prosecutor said the recipe book with her handwritten notes is damning evidence. My brother-in-law's wife also filed charges. Turns out Linda had a journal where she documented our progress with timestamps and symptoms. She literally created evidence against herself. Marcus finally went no contact with her after reading the journal entries where she described watching me have reactions and timing how long they lasted. The family is split. Some think we're overreacting. Others are horrified. His aunt reached out yesterday and said she's been suspicious about Linda's behavior for years. Apparently, when Marcus's ex got engaged to someone else, Linda had said, "If I can't have the daughter-in-law I want, I'll fix the one I have." Nobody thought she meant it literally. Trial is set for next month. The next morning, Marcus drove us to his Aunt Sarah's house. She'd called 3 times before breakfast, insisting we come over immediately. I packed my EpiPen and some safe snacks, still paranoid about eating anywhere connected to Linda's family. Sarah met us at the door, her face pale. She pulled us into her living room where Marcus's cousins were already gathered. Everyone looked uncomfortable. "I need to show you something," Sarah said, pulling out a thick folder. After what happened at the restaurant, I went through some old family photos and documents. She spread papers across the coffee table. There were medical records, insurance claims, hospital bills. My stomach dropped as I recognized a pattern. "This is from when Marcus's grandmother lived with Linda 15 years ago," Sarah explained. "Look at the hospital visits." The records showed Marcus's grandmother had been admitted multiple times for food poisoning and allergic reactions during the 2 years she lived with Linda. The symptoms were eerily similar to what I'd experienced. Marcus grabbed the papers, his hands trembling. Grandma didn't have any food allergies. Mom always said she was just getting senile and eating things she shouldn't. That's what Linda told everyone, Sarah said quietly. "But I remember your grandmother was sharp as a tack. She kept saying Linda was putting something in her food, but we all thought it was dementia talking. I felt sick. This wasn't just about me or my brother-in-law's wife. This was a pattern spanning decades." Marcus's cousin Emma suddenly spoke up. "Remember when I stayed with Aunt Linda during college? I kept getting these weird rashes and stomach problems. She said it was stress from studying. And my daughter," another cousin added, "when she was little, she'd always get sick after Sunday dinners. Linda said she just had a sensitive stomach." The room erupted with similar stories. Person after person sharing mysterious illnesses that only happened around Linda's food. The scope of her behavior was staggering. Marcus stood up abruptly and walked to the window. I could see his shoulders shaking. His whole world was crumbling. "We need to document everything," I said, trying to stay focused. "Get any medical records you can find. Write down dates, symptoms, what she served. The prosecutor needs to see this pattern." Sarah nodded. "I've already started calling family members. There's more though." She pulled out another document. "I found this in my mother's things after she passed. It's a letter she never sent. The letter was dated 10 years ago, addressed to Adult Protective Services. In it, Sarah's mother detailed her concerns about Linda's treatment of Marcus's grandmother, including suspicions about the food. She'd never sent it because Linda had convinced the family that she was overreacting. "We failed her," Sarah whispered. "We all failed her." The next few days were a whirlwind of family members coming forward. Marcus barely spoke, processing the revelation that his mother had been systematically systematically poisoning people for years. He moved through the house like a ghost, occasionally picking up his phone to look at old photos of family gatherings, now seeing them through a completely different lens. Linda, meanwhile, was not staying quiet. Despite the restraining order, she was calling family members constantly, spinning elaborate stories about how I'd manipulated everyone. She claimed I'd planted the evidence, that I'd forged her handwriting in the recipe book. Some relatives believed her. Marcus's uncle called one evening, screaming at me through the phone about destroying the family. "Linda's been nothing but loving to all of us," he shouted. "You're just a vindictive little girl who couldn't handle a strong mother-in-law." These calls became daily occurrences. Family members who'd eaten Linda's food for years without obvious reactions couldn't believe she was capable of such calculated cruelty. They accused me of being dramatic, of overreacting to a misunderstanding. The division was tearing Marcus apart. His brother initially supported us, but after a week of Linda's phone calls, he started wavering. "Maybe she really was trying to help," he said during a tense family meeting. "Maybe she just didn't understand how serious allergies are." His wife looked at him in disbelief. "She documented our symptoms in a journal. She watched us suffer and took notes. But it's Mom," he said weakly. "She wouldn't actually try to hurt anyone." That's when I realized the true insidiousness of Linda's behavior. She'd cultivated this image of the devoted mother and grandmother for so long that even faced with overwhelming evidence, people couldn't reconcile it with the woman who'd been poisoning them. Marcus finally snapped when his brother suggested we drop the charges. "She poisoned my wife," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "She poisoned our grandmother. She poisoned your wife. How can you even suggest we let this go?" The argument escalated until both brothers were shouting. Their relationship, already strained, seemed to shatter completely that night. Linda must have sensed the family fragmenting because she changed tactics. Instead of denying everything, she started playing the victim. She posted on social media about her mental health struggles and how she'd been trying alternative healing methods because she loved us so much. The posts were carefully crafted to garner sympathy. She talked about the stress of losing her husband 5 years ago, how she just wanted to help her family be healthy. She made it sound like a misguided act of love rather than systematic poisoning. Some extended family members started sharing her posts, adding comments about forgiveness and understanding. They organized a prayer circle for Linda, painting her as a troubled woman who needed help, not punishment. I watched Marcus read these posts, each one another knife in his back. His own mother was using his father's death to manipulate people into supporting her. "She's rewriting history," he said one night, showing me a post where Linda claimed I'd always been difficult and refused to bond with the family. The truth was, I'd tried desperately to win Linda's approval in the early days. I'd learned her recipes, helped with holiday preparations, bought thoughtful gifts. Nothing was ever good enough because I wasn't the daughter-in-law she'd chosen. As the prosecutor built the case, more evidence emerged. They subpoenaed Linda's credit card records and found purchases of concentrated nut oils and extracts dating back years. She'd been buying them online and having them shipped to a P.O. box, clearly knowing she needed to hide these purchases. They also found searches on her computer for allergy exposure therapy and "Can small amounts of allergens build immunity?" The searches started right after Marcus and I got engaged, but the most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. Linda's hairdresser reached out to me through Facebook. She'd been Linda's confidant for 20 years and had recordings. "I started recording our conversations a few months ago," she explained when we met. "Linda would say things that made me uncomfortable, but I thought I was overreacting. After her arrest, I listened back and realized I needed to share these." The recordings were chilling. Linda discussing her project to fix me, laughing about how I'd never suspect anything because she was so careful with the doses, complaining that I wasn't getting sick enough, that maybe she needed to increase the amounts. In one recording, she mentioned her mother-in-law. I did the same thing with Robert's mother. Took 2 years, but eventually she got so sick she had to move to a nursing home. Best decision for everyone. I had to run to the bathroom to vomit after hearing that. She deliberately made an elderly woman sick enough to require nursing care, and she was proud of it. The hairdresser also had texts where Linda asked about other clients with allergies, fishing for information about how they managed their conditions. She'd been researching, planning, perfecting her methods. When the prosecutor played these recordings for Marcus, he broke down completely. The mother he'd defended his whole life, the woman he'd trusted above everyone else, was a monster wearing a grandmother's smile. The family fracture deepened when this evidence became known. Those who'd been defending Linda went silent, unable to reconcile the recordings with their image of her. But instead of admitting they were wrong, many simply withdrew, cutting contact with us entirely. Marcus's brother was the worst. He accused us of fabricating the recordings, of paying off the hairdresser. When that didn't work, he pivoted to saying we were destroying Mom's life over nothing serious. "Nobody died," he said during one heated confrontation, "so she made some mistakes with food. Is that really worth sending a senior citizen to prison?" His wife filed for separation the next day. She couldn't stay with someone who minimized attempted poisoning as a mistake. As the trial date approached, strange things started happening. Our mail would go missing. Packages would arrive that we hadn't ordered, some containing foods with nuts. Dead flowers appeared on our doorstep. We installed security cameras and caught Linda's friend Patricia leaving the dead flowers. When confronted by police, Patricia admitted Linda had been calling her from jail, asking for favors. She thought she was helping a wrongly accused friend. The prosecutor added witness tampering and harassment charges to Linda's case. But the damage to our daily lives was already done. I couldn't relax in my own home, constantly checking locks and security footage. Marcus threw himself into work, staying late to avoid dealing with the family chaos. I could see him struggling with guilt, wondering if he should have seen the signs earlier. He'd sometimes pull out photo albums, staring at pictures of his grandmother, torturing himself with what-ifs. One evening, I found him in his father's study, going through old letters. "Dad knew," he said quietly. "Look at these." The letters were from his father to a lawyer, discussing concerns about Linda's behavior. He'd never sent them, but they detailed incidents where he'd caught Linda lying about ingredients or dismissing people's dietary restrictions as fussiness. "He tried to protect us," Marcus said, tears streaming down his face. He tried to tell me once that Mom could be difficult about food, but I didn't understand what he meant. We added the letters to our evidence file, another piece of the puzzle showing Linda's long history of using food as a weapon. The week before the trial, Linda's lawyer contacted us with a plea deal offer. She'd plead guilty to misdemeanor assault and accept probation if we dropped the felony charges. No jail time, just some community service and a promise to stay away from us. Absolutely not, I said before Marcus could even consider it. She systematically poisoned multiple people over decades. She needs to face real consequences. The lawyer tried to guilt us, talking about Linda's age, her health problems, how prison would be difficult for her. I thought about Marcus's grandmother dying in a nursing home, probably wondering why her family didn't believe her. I thought about all the family members who'd suffered mysterious illnesses over the years. I thought about how Linda had laughed in those recordings about making me sick. No deal, Marcus said firmly. She faces the full charges. Linda's supporters made one last push to change our minds. They organized a family meeting at Sarah's house, ambushing us with a room full of relatives ready to plead Linda's case. She's sick, one aunt argued. She needs therapy, not prison. Think about what this is doing to the family, an uncle added. We've never had scandal like this. Can't you handle this privately? The pressure was intense. They talked about family loyalty, about forgiveness, about how Linda had already suffered enough. They minimized her actions, reframed them as misguided love, accused us of being vindictive. But Sarah stood up for us. Linda poisoned my mother, she said coldly. She poisoned children at family gatherings. She laughed about it. This isn't about family scandal. It's about stopping a predator. The room erupted in arguments. Accusations flew about taking sides, about destroying the family, about airing dirty laundry in public. Marcus and I sat in the center of it all, weathering the storm of our family tearing itself apart. Finally, Marcus stood up. Mom made her choices, he said, his voice carrying over the chaos. She chose to poison people. She chose to lie about it. She chose to keep doing it for years. Now she faces the consequences. And if you can't support us in seeking justice for her victims, then you're complicit in what she did. We left the meeting with half the family no longer speaking to us, but the other half, the ones who'd suffered Linda's cooking over the years, stood firmly with us. As we prepared for trial, I reflected on how different my life had become. 3 years ago, I just wanted Linda to accept me as her daughter-in-law. Now I was the key witness in her criminal trial. The irony wasn't lost on me. Linda had tried to fix me to make me suitable for her son. Instead, she'd revealed herself as someone no family should have to endure. Her obsession with control, her willingness to hurt others to get her way, had finally caught up with her. Marcus and I grew stronger through the ordeal. We'd faced his mother's cruelty, his family's division, and threats to our safety. We'd stood together when it would have been easier to give in to the pressure. I'm sorry, he said one night as we reviewed our testimony for the 100th time. I'm sorry I didn't believe you when you first got sick. I'm sorry I defended her for so long. You couldn't have known, I told him. She's your mother. You're supposed to trust your mother. But that was Linda's greatest weapon, the trust that comes with family. She'd exploited it for decades, hurting those who should have been safest in her care. As we headed to bed the night before the trial, I checked our security system one more time. The cameras showed our quiet street. No signs of Patricia or any other of Linda's supporters. Our doors were locked, our windows secure. Tomorrow, we'll face Linda in court. Tomorrow, the full truth will finally be told. Tomorrow, justice would begin for all her victims, including the ones who never lived to see it. I thought about Marcus's grandmother, about all the family members who'd suffered in silence, dismissed and disbelieved. Tomorrow was for them too. The trial would be difficult. Linda would play the victim, her supporters would fill the gallery, and our family would never fully heal from the divisions her actions had caused. But we would be there, Marcus and I, along with Sarah and my brother-in-law's wife and all the others who'd finally found their voices. We would tell our truths, show our evidence, and ensure that Linda faced justice for every calculated dose of poison she'd ever served with a smile. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a strange sense of peace. Linda had tried to break me, to fix me through poison and pain. Instead, she'd revealed her true nature and united her victims against her. Tomorrow, her reign of culinary terror will finally end. The courtroom doors loomed before us as we arrived at the courthouse. Marcus gripped my hand tightly as we walked past a cluster of Linda's supporters, holding signs that read, "Free Linda," and "Family First." Patricia stood among them, glaring at us with pure hatred. Inside, the prosecutor met us in a small conference room. She spread out documents across the table, her expression grave. "There's been a development," she said. "Linda's lawyer filed a motion claiming mental incompetence. They're arguing she has early onset dementia." My stomach turned. Of course Linda would try this angle. Marcus slammed his fist on the table, making the papers jump. "She's lying. She's completely lucid." "I know," the prosecutor said, "but they have a psychiatrist willing to testify. We need to be prepared for this strategy." The courtroom filled quickly. Linda entered wearing a modest gray dress, her hair styled simply, looking every bit the confused elderly woman her lawyer wanted to portray. She moved slowly, deliberately, occasionally touching her temple as if confused. When she saw us, her mask slipped for just a moment. Pure malice flashed in her eyes before she quickly returned to her befuddled act. She whispered loudly to her lawyer, "Who are those people? They look familiar." The performance made me sick. This was the woman who had meticulously documented her poisoning campaign, who had laughed about her victim's suffering. Now she was pretending not to recognize her own son. The judge called the court to order, and Linda's lawyer immediately stood. "Your Honor, we request a competency evaluation. My client is suffering from cognitive decline and cannot adequately participate in her defense." The prosecutor objected, but the judge decided to hear testimony on the matter first. Linda's paid psychiatrist took the stand, describing supposed symptoms of dementia he'd observed during 2 brief sessions with her. During cross-examination, Our prosecutor destroyed his credibility. She presented recordings from the jail where Linda discussed legal strategy in detail with her lawyer, showing clear comprehension and planning ability. The psychiatrist stammered, unable to explain the contradiction. Then came our turn. The prosecutor called me to the stand first. As I walked past Linda, she grabbed my wrist. "You're that girl who's trying to steal my recipes," she said loudly. "I don't know why you're being so mean to me." I yanked my hand away, my skin crawling from her touch. The bailiff moved closer, warning Linda to keep her hands to herself. On the stand, I detailed everything: the mysterious illnesses, finding the recipe book, the pattern of poisoning spanning decades. Linda maintained her confused act, occasionally shaking her head and muttering about not understanding. When the prosecutor showed the photos of Linda's annotated recipes, her lawyer objected. "My client doesn't remember writing these. Anyone could have added those notes." But the prosecutor was ready. She'd had a handwriting expert analyze the notes, comparing them to years of Linda's correspondence. The match was undeniable. During a recess, Marcus's brother approached us in the hallway. His wife wasn't with him. Their separation was moving forward. "Please," he begged. "Can't you see what this is doing to Mom? She's clearly not well. She's well enough to orchestrate this entire performance." I shot back. He turned to Marcus. "She's our mother. Dad would never want this." Marcus's jaw clenched. Dad knew what she was capable of. "We found his letters." His brother's face went white. "What letters?" But before Marcus could answer, Linda's supporters surrounded us. They pressed in close, voices rising, accusing us of elder abuse, of greed, of destroying the family. Security had to intervene to clear a path for us. Back in court, the prosecutor called Sarah to testify. She brought the medical records from Marcus's grandmother, laying out the pattern of mysterious illnesses. Linda's confused act wavered as Sarah spoke about her mother's suffering. "My mother trusted Linda," Sarah said, her voice steady despite her tears. "She lived in that house, ate Linda's food every day, and slowly got sicker. Linda watched it happen. She timed it. She documented it." Linda's lawyer tried to discredit Sarah, suggesting her mother's age and existing health conditions were to blame. But Sarah came prepared with her mother's medical records from before living with Linda, a clean bill of health aside from mild arthritis. The hairdresser took the stand next. The prosecutor played the recordings, Linda's voice filling the courtroom as she laughed about her project and discussed increasing doses. The elderly woman crumbled completely as Linda shot to her feet. "Those recordings are fake!" she screamed. "That witch paid her to say those things. I was helping them. They needed to be stronger." The judge banged his gavel, threatening to remove Linda if she had another outburst. Her lawyer whispered urgently in her ear, and she sat down, but the damage was done. The entire courtroom had seen the real Linda emerge. Marcus testified next. His hands shook as he held the journal where Linda had documented her poisoning campaign. He read entries aloud, his voice breaking as he described his grandmother's symptoms, meticulously recorded in his mother's handwriting. January 15th. Mother-in-law complained of stomach cramps after dinner. Lasted approximately 3 hours. I may need to adjust the walnut oil ratio in pasta sauce. March 3rd. Successful reaction achieved with new almond flour mixture in pancakes. Hives appeared within 20 minutes. She blamed the strawberries. June 10th. Mother-in-law refusing more meals. Claims I'm poisoning her. The family believes it's dementia. Perfect cover. By the time he finished reading, several jury members were visibly disturbed. Linda had dropped all pretense of confusion, her face twisted with rage as she glared at her son. During cross-examination, Linda's lawyer tried to paint Marcus as a son manipulated by his wife, suggesting I had turned him against his mother. But Marcus stood firm. "My mother systematically poisoned my wife, my grandmother, and countless other family members," he said. "My wife didn't turn me against her. Her own actions did." The trial continued for 3 more days. More family members testified about mysterious illnesses linked to Linda's cooking. The prosecutor presented credit card records showing years of hidden purchases of concentrated allergens. Expert witnesses explained how calculated and deliberate the poisoning campaign had been. Linda's defense crumbled piece by piece. Her lawyer pivoted from the dementia defense to arguing that she genuinely believed she was helping, that she'd been misguided but not malicious. But the journal entries and recordings made that impossible to believe. On the final day of testimony, the prosecutor introduced a surprise witness, a woman named Catherine who had worked as Linda's housekeeper 15 years ago. She testified that she'd quit after catching Linda adding something to food meant for Marcus's grandmother. "I confronted her," Catherine said. "She told me I was seeing things, that I'd better keep my mouth shut if I wanted to keep getting work in this town. I was a single mother. I needed the job references, so I left quietly." She'd carried the guilt for years, especially after Marcus's grandmother died. When she heard about the trial, she knew she had to come forward. Linda's mask finally shattered completely. She began ranting about ungrateful family members, about how she'd tried to make them stronger, better. She accused me of being weak, of turning her son against her, of destroying her family. "I gave them everything," she screamed as the bailiffs moved to restrain her. "I tried to fix them. They were all so weak, so pathetic. I made them better." The judge ordered her removed from the courtroom. As they dragged her out, she locked eyes with Marcus. "You were always too soft," she spat. "Just like your father. I should have fixed you too." Marcus flinched as if he'd been slapped. I grabbed his hand, feeling him tremble. His mother had just admitted she'd considered poisoning him too. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours. When they filed back in, their faces were grim. The foreman stood and read the verdict. Guilty on all counts. Multiple counts of assault, attempted poisoning, and food tampering. The witness tampering and harassment charges added years to her potential sentence. Linda showed no emotion as the verdict was read. She sat perfectly still, her face a mask of cold fury. But when the judge revoked her bail and ordered her taken into custody immediately, she exploded. "You'll all regret this," she screamed as the bailiffs cuffed her. "I know things about all of you. I'll destroy every last one of you." Her threats echoed in the courtroom as they dragged her away. Some of her supporters were crying, others looked shell-shocked, finally seeing the woman they'd defended for who she really was. Outside the courthouse, we were swarmed by family members. Some congratulated us, others accused us of destroying the family. Marcus's brother pushed through the crowd, his face twisted with rage. "You did this! He snarled at me. You turned him against our mother. She's going to die in prison because of you. She poisoned people, I said quietly, including your wife. She made mistakes, he shouted, but she's still our mother. You don't understand because you're not your real family. Marcus stepped between us. She's more family than Mom ever was, and if you can't see that, then you're not my brother anymore. The confrontation might have escalated, but Sarah intervened, pulling us away. We drove to her house in silence, the weight of the verdict settling over us. Justice had been served, but at the cost of our family's unity. That evening, as we sat in Sarah's living room, Marcus's phone rang constantly. Family members called with reactions ranging from relief to fury. He eventually turned it off, unable to handle any more emotional assaults. What happens now? He asked, staring at the darkened screen. Sarah poured him a drink. Now we try to heal. Those who can't accept the truth will drift away. Those who can will stick together. The family will be smaller, but healthier. Over the next few weeks, the family divide solidified. Linda's supporters, led by Marcus's brother, cut us off completely. They started a fund for her appeal, maintaining she was a victim of a vindictive daughter-in-law. Some even suggested I'd somehow orchestrated the entire thing, but others came forward with their own stories. Cousins called to share memories of getting sick at family gatherings. Elderly aunts recalled Linda's mother-in-law's complaints about the food. The pattern became undeniable to all but the most determined deniers. Linda was sentenced to 15 years in prison. At her sentencing hearing, she showed no remorse. Instead, she delivered a rambling statement about ungrateful family members and her attempts to improve them. She accused me of stealing her son, of destroying her life's work. I only wanted to help, she said, her voice cold. They were all so weak. I was making them stronger, and this is how they repay me. The judge was unmoved. He called her actions calculated, cruel, and unconscionable, noting the particular evil of using food, something that should nourish and comfort, as a weapon. As they led Linda away, she turned to look at us one last time. The hatred in her eyes was chilling. Even facing 15 years in prison, she showed no sign of understanding what she'd done wrong. Marcus and I left the courthouse hand in hand. The ordeal was over, but its effects would linger. We'd lost half our family, gained terrible knowledge about someone we'd trusted, and learned just how far someone would go to maintain control. But we'd also found strength we didn't know we had. We'd stood up to a master manipulator, exposed decades of abuse, and secured justice for victims who'd suffered in silence. We'd protected future victims from Linda's twisted version of love. The family gatherings would be smaller now. Sunday dinners would happen at Sarah's house, with food we could trust. The empty chairs would be a reminder of the price of Linda's actions, but also of our courage in stopping her. As we drove home, Marcus squeezed my hand. I'm proud of us, he said. Dad would be proud too. I thought about his father's unsent letters, his attempts to document Linda's behavior. He'd known something was wrong but hadn't been able to stop it. We'd finished what he'd started. We did it for all of them, I said. For your grandmother, for all the cousins who got sick, for everyone who suffered in silence. Marcus nodded, tears in his eyes. And for us, for our future. Our kids will never have to fear their grandmother's cooking. It was a sobering thought, that we'd had to protect our future children from their own grandmother. But Linda had made that choice when she decided to use food as a weapon. We'd simply held her accountable. The road ahead would be difficult. Family relationships would need to be rebuilt. Trust would come slowly. The wounds Linda had inflicted would take time to heal. But for the first time in years, we could eat without fear. We could attend family gatherings without wondering what hidden ingredients might harm us. We could build relationships based on honesty instead of manipulation. Linda had tried to control us through poison and fear. Instead, she'd taught us the power of truth and the importance of protecting those we love. Her legacy wouldn't be the family she'd tried to shape through cruelty, but the stronger, more honest family that emerged from exposing her crimes. As we pulled into our driveway, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The woman who'd terrorized us with toxic love was gone. The family that remained might be fractured, but it was free from her poisonous influence. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would be appeals to face, family rifts to navigate, and healing to pursue. But tonight we were safe. Tonight, we were free. Tonight, justice had been served. The irony wasn't lost on me. Linda had wanted the perfect family, controlled and shaped to her specifications. Instead, her actions had created a family that valued truth over appearance, safety over tradition, and justice over blind loyalty. In trying to fix us, she'd broken herself. And in stopping her, we'd found strength we never knew we possessed. The morning after sentencing, I woke to pounding on our front door. Marcus jumped out of bed, grabbing a baseball bat. Through the peephole, we saw Marcus's cousin Nicholas, Linda's most devoted supporter. Marcus opened the door cautiously. Nicholas shoved past him, his face red with fury. He threw a manila envelope at me, papers scattering across the floor. Congratulations, he spat. You've destroyed everything. Linda's house is being foreclosed. Her medical bills from jail are astronomical. The family home where we all grew up is gone because of you. I bent to gather the papers, legal notices, medical invoices, bank statements. Linda had apparently spent her savings on her defense, leaving nothing for property taxes or maintenance. That's not our fault, Marcus said firmly. Nicholas laughed bitterly. Everything is your fault. You couldn't just accept her love. You had to make it into something sinister. He stormed out before we could respond. Marcus locked the door behind him, then helped me collect the scattered documents. Among them was a handwritten note from Linda, smuggled out through Nicholas. The note was rambling, filled with accusations and threats. She claimed to have insurance against us, secrets that would destroy our lives. She demanded we recant our testimony, get her released, or face consequences. We took the note straight to the prosecutor. She added it to Linda's file, evidence of continued harassment from prison, but she warned us that Linda's supporters might escalate their tactics. That afternoon, Sarah called with disturbing news. Several family members had received similar notes from Linda, each tailored to their specific fears. She was trying to manipulate them from behind bars, using personal information as weapons. Marcus's brother had received threats about his divorce proceedings. Emma got warnings about her college transcripts. Even elderly relatives received ominous messages about their medical histories. She's trying to regain control, Sarah said during an emergency family meeting at her house. Even from prison, she's attempting to puppet master everyone. The group that gathered was smaller than before, only those who'd stood by us through the trial. We compared notes, finding patterns in Linda's threats. She claimed to have documents, recordings, evidence of various family secrets. Marcus's jaw tightened as he read through the messages. She's lying. This is what she does, creates fear to maintain power. But some family members were genuinely frightened. Linda had always been the keeper of family information, the one who remembered everyone's mistakes and indiscretions. Now she was weaponizing that knowledge. Patricia appeared at Sarah's door while we were meeting, demanding to be let in. Sarah tried to close the door, but Patricia wedged her foot in the gap. Linda has something important to tell you all, she announced, waving another envelope. She's willing to forgive everything if you just listen. Sarah finally got the door closed and locked. Through the window, we watched Patricia pace the porch, occasionally shouting about family loyalty and forgiveness. Someone called the police and she left before they arrived. The harassment intensified over the following days. Our mailbox was stuffed with printed emails from Linda's supporters, accusing us of elder abuse. Someone created a social media page called Justice for Linda, sharing old family photos with captions painting her as a devoted grandmother wrongly imprisoned. Marcus tried to get the page taken down, but new ones kept appearing. The narrative they pushed was consistent. I was an outsider who destroyed a loving family, turned a son against his mother, and sent an innocent woman to prison. Catherine, the former housekeeper who testified, called me one evening in tears. "They're calling my work," she said, saying I lied in court, that I should be fired, I might lose my job. The prosecutor filed additional charges against Linda for witness intimidation, but the damage was spreading. Linda's network of supporters was doing her bidding, creating chaos she could no longer create herself. Then came the package. It arrived on a Thursday. No return address. Inside was a photo album, pictures of Marcus throughout his childhood, each one annotated in Linda's handwriting. But the notes weren't loving memories. They were criticisms, plans, manipulations. Under a photo of 5-year-old Marcus, too sensitive, must toughen him up. Start with food challenges. By his high school graduation, still too attached. I need to control his relationships better. The final pages showed photos of me from before I'd even met Marcus. Pictures taken at my college, at my first job, at coffee shops. Linda had been watching me, studying me, long before we'd officially met. Marcus's hands shook as he turned the pages. His entire life had been a project to her, something to control and shape. The album was her confession, her pride in decades of manipulation. We gave the album to the prosecutor, but the psychological damage was done. Marcus couldn't sleep, haunted by the realization that his mother had orchestrated aspects of his life he'd thought were his own choices. Sarah discovered more evidence in Linda's abandoned house. Hidden in the attic were boxes of documents, not just about family members, but about anyone who'd crossed Linda's path. Neighbors, co-workers, Marcus's teachers. She'd kept files on everyone, documenting weaknesses and secrets. Among the files was correspondence with other mothers who'd had difficult daughters-in-law. They'd exchanged tips on manipulation tactics, discussing ways to break up marriages and regain control of their sons. Linda had been part of an entire network of controlling mothers. The revelation sent shockwaves through our community. Some of the women named in the correspondence were respected members of local churches and charities. Their own families began questioning past illnesses and relationship problems. Marcus's brother appeared at our door one night, soaking wet from rain. His wife had left him, taking their children. The divorce papers cited his refusal to acknowledge the abuse she'd suffered. "I need somewhere to stay," he said quietly, not meeting our eyes. Marcus hesitated, then stepped aside. His brother entered, a broken man finally seeing the truth he'd denied for so long. He sat at our kitchen table, head in his hands. "She used to make me special food when I was little," he said. "Said it would make me strong like her, not weak like Dad. I never questioned why I got sick so often." The pattern was becoming clearer. Linda had experimented on her own children first, perfecting her methods before moving on to others. Both sons had mysterious childhood illnesses that doctors couldn't explain. As more family members came forward with their own revelations, Linda's prison communications became increasingly desperate. She offered bribes, threatened lawsuits, promised to reveal where she'd hidden money if people would support her appeal. Nicholas organized a visit to Linda in prison, bringing several family members she'd been manipulating. They expected to find a frail, suffering grandmother. Instead, they found Linda in full control of her faculties, barking orders and making demands. "You're all weak," she told them when they refused to help her escape. "I made this family strong, and without me, you're nothing." The visit was recorded, and Nicholas shared the audio with everyone. Linda's mask had finally slipped completely, revealing the narcissistic manipulator beneath. Even her most devoted supporters couldn't deny the venom in her voice. Marcus's brother moved in with us temporarily while he figured out his next steps. He spent hours reading through the evidence we'd compiled, finally understanding the scope of his mother's actions. "I helped her," he said one evening, staring at photos of family gatherings. "All those times I defended her, dismissed people's concerns, I enabled this." The guilt was eating at him, but it was also opening his eyes. He started reaching out to his estranged wife, acknowledging what she'd endured, apologizing for his blindness. Patricia's harassment escalated until she was arrested for trespassing at Sarah's house. In her car, police found detailed plans to break Linda out of prison, along with forged documents intended to discredit our testimony. The conspiracy went deeper than we'd imagined. Linda had cultivated cultivated a network of supporters over decades, people who owed her favors or feared her knowledge. Now they were acting as her proxies, trying to maintain her control from the outside. But the network was crumbling. Each arrest, each revealed plot, each piece of evidence weakened Linda's influence. Family members who'd been neutral started choosing sides, most landing firmly against Linda as the truth became undeniable. Marcus found more letters from his father, hidden in a safety deposit box we didn't know existed. His father had documented Linda's behavior for years, gathering evidence he'd never had the courage to use. One letter, dated just months before his death, was addressed to Marcus. "Son, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've finally seen the truth about your mother. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to protect you. Don't let her destroy your life like she destroyed mine." The letter detailed years of psychological abuse, controlling behavior, and suspected poisonings. Marcus's father had lived in fear, staying only to protect his children. His death, officially a heart attack, suddenly seemed suspicious. We brought the letters to the prosecutor, but too much time had passed to investigate his death properly. Still, it added another layer to Linda's pattern of abuse. Emma organized a support group for Linda's victims. The first meeting drew over 20 people: family members, former friends, neighbors who'd experienced mysterious illnesses after Linda's dinner parties. The stories they shared painted a picture of decades of calculated harm. One woman revealed that her daughter had developed severe allergies after spending summers with Linda as a babysitting client. Another talked about her husband's mysterious illness that doctors couldn't diagnose, which cleared up only after they moved away from Linda's neighborhood. The support group became a healing space, but also a revelation of how far Linda's poison had spread, literally and figuratively. Her need for control had damaged dozens of lives. Linda's lawyer filed appeal after appeal, each one dismissed. Her behavior in prison wasn't helping. She'd been caught trying to poison her cellmate's food with cleaning products, claiming she was helping her build immunity. The incident added years to her sentence and moved her to solitary confinement. Even isolated, she continued writing letters, though most were now intercepted and added to her file. Marcus slowly began processing his trauma. He'd have good days where he felt free from her influence, then bad days where every childhood memory felt tainted. The brother who'd moved in with us became an unexpected source of support, both of them finally able to discuss their shared experiences. "Remember when she made us eat those special vitamins?" his brother asked one evening. "I found the bottles in her bathroom. They were expired prescription substances she'd ground up." Each revelation was another piece of the puzzle, showing how Linda had experimented on her own children to perfect her poisoning techniques. The vitamins had caused stomach issues, headaches, and behavioral changes that she'd blamed on growing pains. Sarah compiled all the evidence into a comprehensive document, creating a timeline of Linda's crimes spanning 40 years. The document became crucial for other victims seeking validation and understanding of their experiences. Some family members who'd initially supported Linda began reaching out, ashamed of their stance during the trial. They'd been manipulated too, they realized, turned against us by Linda's careful campaigns of misinformation. Marcus's uncle called to apologize for the horrible things he'd said. "She had me convinced you were evil," he admitted. "She'd been telling me lies about you for years, setting the stage for this moment." The reconciliations were slow and painful. Trust, once broken, was hard to rebuild. But gradually, the family Linda had torn apart began finding ways to heal. Catherine got her job back after the prosecutor intervened, explaining the witness intimidation she'd faced. She became an advocate for other domestic workers afraid to report abuse, using her experience to help others find their voices. The investigation into Linda's network uncovered similar cases across the state, other controlling mothers using food as a weapon, sharing techniques and covering for each other. It led to several more arrests and a broader awareness of this insidious form of abuse. Marcus and I attended every day of Patricia's trial. She was convicted of conspiracy and harassment, receiving 2 years in prison. During her sentencing, she screamed about loyalty and family, still unable to see how Linda had manipulated her. Nicholas finally broke free from Linda's influence after Patricia's conviction. He came to us with boxes of documents Linda had asked him to hide, more evidence of her crimes, including plans to poison witnesses if the trial hadn't gone her way. "I'm sorry," he said, tears streaming down his face. "I was so blinded by her. She made me feel special, like I was the only one who understood her. I see now that was just another manipulation." The documents revealed that Linda had been planning to expand her poisoning campaign if acquitted. She had lists of targets, detailed plans, and had been stockpiling concentrated allergens and toxins. We held a family memorial for all of Linda's victims, including Marcus's grandmother and potentially his father. It was a somber gathering, acknowledging the pain and loss Linda had caused over decades. Marcus spoke about breaking the cycle, ensuring Linda's poison, both literal and metaphorical, ended with her imprisonment. His brother talked about facing hard truths and choosing healing over denial. As Linda's appeals continued failing, her letters became more desperate and disjointed. She claimed to be dying, to have cancer, to be suffering from the same dementia she'd faked during trial. Prison medical reports showed she was in perfect health, just aging normally in confinement. The family home where Marcus grew up was eventually sold. During the final walkthrough, we found more evidence hidden in the walls, journals dating back to Linda's childhood, showing this behavior had deep roots. Her own mother had been controlling and abusive, using similar tactics. Linda had learned and perfected these methods, passing trauma down through generations until we'd finally broken the chain. Marcus decided to use his inheritance from the house sale to fund a scholarship for students studying food safety and allergen awareness, something positive from all the pain Linda had caused. The ripple effects continued. Other families began examining mysterious illnesses and relationship problems in a new light. Support groups formed in neighboring towns. Awareness grew about this particular form of domestic abuse. Linda's story became a cautionary tale in medical and legal circles. Conferences discussed the case, examining how someone could poison family members for decades without detection. New protocols were developed for investigating suspicious patterns of illness. On the first anniversary of Linda's sentencing, we held a celebration of survival at Sarah's house. The gathering was smaller than old family events, but filled with genuine warmth and trust. Marcus Marcus's brother had reconciled with his wife and children. They attended together, their relationship stronger for having faced the truth. Other family members had found their own paths to healing. We shared a meal where everyone knew exactly what ingredients were used, where food was safe and prepared with love instead of manipulation. It was a simple gathering, but profound in its honesty. Linda continued serving her sentence, increasingly isolated as her remaining supporters faced their own legal consequences, or simply moved on. Her empire of control had crumbled completely. Marcus and I started planning for our future, including the children we hoped to have. They would grow up in a family free from Linda's influence, where food meant nourishment and love meant support, not control. The last letter from Linda arrived on a Tuesday. It was short, her handwriting shaky. "You'll regret this when I'm gone." We gave it to the prosecutor to add to her file. There was no regret, only relief that her reign of terror was over. The family she'd tried to control through fear and poison had found strength in truth and justice. As I prepared dinner that evening, measuring ingredients without fear, I thought about how far we'd come. Linda had tried to break us with her twisted love. Instead, she'd forged us into something stronger, a family bound by survival, truth, and genuine care for each other. The woman who'd poisoned food to control people would spend her remaining years eating prison meals she couldn't tamper with. It was a fitting end to her story of manipulation and abuse. Our story, however, was just beginning. Free from Linda's shadow, we could finally build the life we'd always wanted, surrounded by a family who chose love over control, honesty over manipulation. The poison had been purged. The healing could truly begin.